Okay, so I've kind of heard back from some of you about what you're planning to do with Arkit, and I think what we should do is actually start back from scratch a little bit and build up a property list based app, and that'll give you guys a lot of flexibility for what you want to do. Whether you're building a game or whatever it is, even just a storybook or something like that, something people have to walk around and collect things. So here we go. All right, so we've got our Sprite kit based ARKit template over here. And let's go ahead and create that property list. So we're going to go over here to new file. And just in the filter up here, you can just type in P Pro or something like that. You'll find it real quick. Property list. We'll just call this game data.plist and go ahead and create it inside of here. Okay, so let's just run through like a kind of quick example of what we can set up here. We're going to make a dictionary item, okay, and that means we can give it a little name over here. So let's just call it cartoon or something like that. Unfold that, and then what we can do is we can start to just put in whatever data we want for this thing, So for example, image, and this would point to the, cartoon base image, something like that, which could be a file in the assets catalog over here. We could also do things like, initially start this off with an animated sequence. So we could have frames inside of here. For something like that, we'd want to set this to be an array because an array is an ordered list. Okay, so basically the items that you put in here would be, the exact frames of the animation. Something like if you're in Flash, they always name them 00 and stuff like that. So I tend to go do the same thing here. So it's something like this, right? But then there's all sorts of other things we could throw in here. Has body, right? Actually, one I've been doing recently in project is putting here body type, and this would point to things like circle, square, and then in the code we would put in a rectangular body, a circular body type, or what we could do is put in here the name of one of the images and use that as the, to define the alpha based body of it, so it's exactly around the alpha data. So tons of things, tons of possibilities, and we'll kind of build off this. And basically what we'll end up doing is anytime, when you do things like, touch a screen or maybe at timed intervals or whatever you want, when you're initially setting up a page of a book or a level, we'll kind of just run through some functions that basically add different elements based on that. So you can have tons of different elements inside of here, obviously, and those will be kind of added into a queue to get passed up into our view controller here, which we talked about previously. This is the kind of our main function for placing things into the ARKit world. But our main game scene is still inside of this scene.swift file, or what was kind of previously considered the game scene.swift file. So that's kind of the road ahead. Let's go ahead and set up another helpers dot Swift file, and we're going to go over here to file, new, just make a good old Swift file. We'll call this helpers. And somebody on YouTube actually pointed out, they're like, well, why don't you, and this is kind of my go-between file between the view controller and the scene over here. And I'm essentially kind of making this a singleton, or basically there's just one instance of this throughout the entire life of the app. So there's not copies of it. And somebody was asking me why do that? Why not do some sort of delegation between these two files? And there was a kind of odd thing I noticed is that, I don't know if there's a bug or what, but I'll print it out. Game began. You get some duplications of this statement right here. So when we run it, and I haven't tried this in beta 6, but in the previous betas, this would actually run twice. So I kind of found that having this, again, essentially like a singleton for the helpers, it did help at times to kind of make sure that some oddities did not happen with that. And this thing's still installing, but I'll pause the video and I'll come back and we'll see if this actually still runs twice in the output window. And yep, there it is. So why does this run 2 times? Nobody knows. But we don't have to worry too much about it. It doesn't seem to affect too much other than what I already talked about. So that's not a deal breaker. Anyway, let's go in here and make this an official class, our helpers. And again, this is just kind of a go-between between the main view controller, which places those items into the AR world, and the scene itself. Okay, and when we put in here static var creation dict, that means that there will only be kind of one instance of this at the time, and we can kind of basically, when we put new objects into the scene, we'll clear this out or replace it, and yeah, that's going to hold. One of the main things it's just going to be holding on to is the name of whatever we're about to put in there next. Okay, but we could also put other things inside of there as well. And let's see if we can go back over here to our scene. And okay, let's take this nice meaty part out here. And actually, we want to take that as well. And we're going to put this into a function of its own. So we're just going to come over here, right function. Let's say add anchor with name. Let's put the name right here. That'll be a string. We could even put in here, if you wanted to kind of separate out the, use multiple property lists, you could do that. That'd be another thing you could pass in. Yeah, let's not worry about it for now. Just something you could think about. All right, so put that over there. Okay, so that's back in. And what we're going to want to do is kind of fetch out some of the initial data from our property list. So for example, let's put in here some properties like trans X. This is going to be a number. Trans Y, oops, and Z. And remember, these are going to be basically the three-dimensional points that this gets created at. So negative numbers are actually in front of you on the Z-axis. So for example, we'd probably want to do something like 0.5. On the Y and the X, let's just go ahead and leave these right dead center for right now. But -1 is off to the left, 1 is off to the right, 1 here is above you, -1 is below you, about the screen height or so, and your ranges are whatever you want essentially. Okay, so back over to here, what we're going to do is need to go and parse that data out of the property list and feed in those values for the X, Y, and Z. Do this in order. Oops, X. Come on. I guess I got to space down. There we go. All right. Okay, so above all that, we're going to type in here let path. This is going to equal bundle.main.path for resource. And again, right now, we're just going to hard code in game data. That's the name of our property list file. And that's going to be of type plist. Okay, so it's just basically a path to that. And then we're going to say let dict. This is going to be an NS dictionary. Not going to use it for too long, though. NS dictionary. Contents of file. We throw in there a path. For some reason it wants that as well. And we'll give it to it. Forcing something out of it. And then what we're going to do is say if dict.object for key. And here's where we're going to put in here the name, okay? Remember, we're going to put in here some sort of, cartoon or whatever it is, whatever you're going to define these as, whatever the game elements, So we're going to pass that name in there, and as long as that does not equal nil, okay, then what we'll do is everything inside of here. Now, you could throw an else statement in here and just, kind of put in here return, which is essentially what's going on here as well. So basically, if this doesn't work out for you, if that fails, then everything else through here is kind of scrapped, in other words. So it just returns out of this function. All right, so dict.object for key. All right, so then what we're going to do is say, we're going to try to make a dictionary out of that. Okay, so if let, I'll just call this the dict, and you guys are all probably familiar with basically variable types, bool, stuff like that. You put that after when you're setting up a variable like this. For dictionaries, the format is string any. Okay, so basically this is the key of it, and then you can have any value after that. So for example, well, there's the key. Well, here, let me just kind of show you. Okay, so dict dot object for key. We're going to put this back inside of here, name again as, make sure that this actually passes as that dictionary type. And then, okay, at that point we would be able to print out, you know, the contents of the dictionary. Okay, print the dict. And to kind of test this whole thing, what we're going to need to do is call this at least once. So let's see, add anchor with name, cartoon, and let's just see what happens. Okay, here it is in the output window. And again, you know, because I called this and this did move to view, it actually got run twice. So, you know, probably we would not want to, I don't know, do that there. Touches began, don't worry. When you touch down, that only happens once. But anyway, so going on. All right. You can see that it is printing it out twice. Okay, that's the main point I'm making here. And there's our trans X, trans Y, that equals 0, trans Z, and they're not in order because dictionaries are not considered ordered lists like arrays are. Okay, so it kind of just spits it out all in whatever order it wants. So you're not getting at image frames and so on like that. Yeah, all right. So at least we're getting back that data, and then what we're going to want to do is get specific things out of it, like the Z translation, things like that, and then we'll feed that into here. And yeah, okay, all right. So let's come here to the top of this. I'm gonna put in here a variable. This will be our trans X, and I believe this has to be a float variable. So we're gonna just set all these to 0 for now. Z. And then to iterate through this dictionary, we're going to say for key value, okay, in the dict. All right, so remember those lines of code right there. This is an important thing. Whenever you're going through the dictionary, you know, if you're going one element at a time, here what you're going to do is just write for key and value, and then we can test if key equals trans X, okay, and that's the exact name of the key that I have over here. See, key, here's our values. So there's trans X, capitalization does matter. And then what we'd want to check is if value is, this is one way of doing it, you could say value is float. And you'll notice that, you know, we have numbers in here. Pretty much any type of number type of passes when you do this testing. So for example, I could put in here if value is time interval. Okay, so you only have the one number type option in your property list, but all of these with different number types would succeed. So if I tried int or float, CG float, they're all going to work. And then what you would just do here is then just say trans X. Okay, so that's that variable right there. Is going to equal value as float. So you can basically, this is safe to do if you've tested that this definitely is of that float type. All right. If you didn't have this in here and you accidentally made a mistake, like put in here something like a string value, you know, you might not notice the difference because you can still put 0 in there, right? That would crash the app. Okay, so that's why you want to put in there this that if statement. And then you can put an else if statement. Keep in mind that this is going to run this is for as many keys as there are in the dictionary. So, you know, if it hits on this, you know, first time around, okay, that's great. Second time around, it's still going to try to test this again for whatever that key is. It'll skip over that, and it'll make its way down here to trans Y, and so on. And don't worry about the speed of it. It is super fast, like computers just are super fast. Not a big thing to sweat. The speed of the property list. Okay, so what you've now got is you're just parsing through all the data inside of here to get your translations, and then we can just feed these into the values down here. So trans X, trans Y, trans Z. Okay, then you know, whole thing is going to kind of go up the chain to our view controller and get pushed into here, and it's going to spit out, you know, currently just one of those these guys with those translations. Okay, so really right now there's absolutely no tie between the, you know, whatever, you know, these images, these frames, everything like that, other than the translations that we've put in here. So what we want to do then is, let's go back over here to this. I'll put in here helpers dot creation dict, and what we're gonna do is let's call this name. Okay, is going to equal whatever that name value is. All right. So when you're setting a basically just kind of pushing in a value to the dictionary like this, your first value here in these brackets is going to be the key, and then this is going to be the value of it. Okay. So, you know, later on, you know, when we're looking through this creation dictionary, what we'd want to do then is something similar to this, where we go for key value in helpers.creationDict, and in that case we'd be testing if key equals name, right? So there's really, if we want, there's just, you know, we could just put this in there right now, okay? You know, but at times you might say something like, okay, if, you know, current game state equals idle. Okay, I don't know what that means, but then you might say that, okay, game state equals idle. Okay, so there might be, you know, sort of different things that you do at different times in a statement like this, you know, just to kind of control, you know, how these elements are used, right? So anyway, it's just something to think about. All right, yeah, okay, I guess we got that. Okay, so then back over here in our view controller, what we're going to do is get rid of all this junk right here. It's going to complain that we're not returning a SK node for right now, but that's okay. Let's create a new class or subclass of SK Sprite nodes. We're going to say new file. This is going to be a Swift file. Let's just call this game element. Okie dokie. All right, so this is going to end up being a subclass of SK Sprite node. And we'll import in Sprite kit. We probably don't need to import in ARKit, but it might not hurt us either. I don't know. Class. It's probably better to have it. Okay, so the name of this is game element, and this is going to be a subclass of SK Sprite node. So it can do everything that an SK Sprite node can do, just like Spider-Man can do everything a spider can. And then let's at least push in here the let's just call this how about element name or something. I don't want to see. Yeah, I don't want to put in there a dot name property, because that is kind of reserved, you know, because every sprite has a self.name property. So we'll just call it element name, and then that'll be whatever the main name is inside of there. And we'll just make this a string. Okay, so for right now, and I'll just put a kind of generic function in here, set up. Okay, and back over here to our view controller. So we'll say let new game element, and then this is going to equal game element. There's our new class, and we'll just put in here game element. Now remember, we kind of inherit all of the we inherit all of the options for initializing this from an SK Sprite node. So we could pass an image in here. We can do whatever we want, but we're going to kind of keep this as generic as possible. So we're just going to throw in here a color, and even there, nothing fancy. We're just going to throw in there a clear color, so it's an invisible color. And we're going to put in here the size being just a CG size of .0. And if you watched any of the past videos, you remember that if we want some interactivity, if we want these game elements moving around in the ARKit universe, we need to put something inside of this class that's going to do that. So another sprite inside of there, a child of this, because this game element, what we're creating right here, is stuck exactly where it's at in that AR world. Okay, so it's tied to wherever this anchor is that we're placing it. Okay, so we couldn't actually put any sort of actions on this itself to move it around, but things inside of there we can. Okay, and what we're going to do now is just say new game element, and you know what? Actually, let's we need to pass in here set up with the dictionaries that we're holding on to in our helper. So let's run back over here to this one real quick, and then we'll just say with dict, or just here, let's do this with dictionary. We'll call this dict, and then specify that that is of this type. Okay, and then we could print out if we just want to see that this is working. Remember, there's not that much in this dictionary other than the name, but it'll be nice to know that it worked. By the way, if you're really new to coding, you put in here my dict is, and then inside of here, so this backward slash or front slash, whichever that one is, and then inside of the parentheses, so you can push out your variable to the output window that way. And you can do things like, if you only wanted to kind of pay attention to that, you can just put in here my dict, all right, and then once this runs, it's just going to filter and only show you that. It is helpful at times if you have a lot of print statements. Okay, all right, back to the main thing that we're doing. So over here to our view controller, so we're going to now say set up with dictionary, and here's where we throw in helpers dot creation dict. And then what we need to do is return the new game element from there. Okay. And we should be good to go. Let's go back over here to our scene. Instead of adding that in right there, let's do it inside of our touches began statement. All right. And then after that, kind of our next mission will be to actually parse through the data inside of our game data.property list inside of our game element. Okay, so we need to actually do something with that name property, and of course we'll end up relying on the property list again, using a lot of the same code that we've already written over this way. But for right now, what we want to see is that when we touch the iPad, it will create a new game element. Granted, we won't be able to see it, but we'll at least be able to, get the whatever this is. And you know what? While that's running, I could go ahead and put in here for key value in dict, and then we'll say if key equals name, and it's still launching. If value, that's launched. If value is string, then what I can do is say that our element name equals value as string. Okay. All right, I'm going to push down, and sure enough, nothing that exciting happened on the iPad itself, but it told me that my dict is name and cartoon. So that is where we'll leave this off. So down here, we're going to now use that element name that we're saving to go look up the rest of the data inside of the property list. Okay. See you in the next video.